Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of The Hard Choice, Simple Steps for Showing Up. My name is Brad Draper. I am your host. I'm grateful to be here. Look at me, I'm snazzy, wearing a shirt and tie. I have an appointment right after this. And as you reflect on last week's episode about intention, moving forward, intentional moving forward, moving your needle, making today the day as if everything changed. Hey, my phone is ringing. It's like I'm immature or something. It's like I've never done this before. She can wait. How about that? Because I'm here with you. Priorities. How grateful I am to be with you. However, I've got a really compressed window of time. I've got about 25 minutes, maybe 30 minutes at most. So I have time to record, edit, upload, post, blah, 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 blah. Technology is amazing. How important it is to move those needles. I had an experience last night that I wanted to really caveat into with this idea of intentional movement, making today as if it's the day that everything changed, because it is. I said last week that it doesn't really matter the movement that you take as long as you take movement. That is somewhat accurate. When you don't know what to do, any movement is worthwhile. But there is obviously some movement better than others. We have the ability to pick and choose the path we take. So I was at an event last night. As of the time of this recording, I like to have 8 weeks of buffer, guys. It's just what it is. I like to have 2 months recorded out. One, because it's basically like new for the first time when I hear it. So that's pretty cool. And two, life happens. So when life happens, I do everything today, right? I can't act for the future. I can act for today. So I take action today. That way, in the future, when things get in the way, this is taken care of because I put you guys as a high priority. Little did you know, these shows take a substantial amount of time, both in thought and in post. And continually finding the time to get down here and not have kids running in and barging in and whatever. Taking action. Anyways, as of the time of this recording, last night was 4th of July. We were at a massive city park full of people. I don't know, 5,000 or 10,000 people. Big concert, big festival, big fair. There were vendors. It was a lot of fun. And we got there very early. We got there at 6:30. We were there till 10:30, so 4 hours with their little boys. They were very tired. Thanks for asking. And we originally seated in a very optimal viewing and leaving location on purpose. And then Michaela saw her cousins. And we went and sat with them. They were much more centrally located in the crowd. They were closer to the concert, still a good location for the fireworks, terrible location for exit. So while we were there, her cousin and her nephew needed to go to the bathroom, as did my child. And my immediate reactionary instinct was to walk laterally from the bathrooms, parallel to the bathrooms, and get to the walkway, the sidewalk, and then cruise down the sidewalk. Uninterrupted, unimpeded by people sitting in their blankets, their chairs, just obstacles like you can't imagine with 5,000 or 10,000 people sitting in a field. Conversely, her cousin had a different thought process. Her thought process was go straight to the toilets, go straight to the porta potties. And that meant traversing through the obstacle of humans and their blankets and their chairs and all their stuff. Well, while as the crow flies, that is a straight shot, is very zigzag, obstacle, dead end walking. It's find the path of least resistance as you're stepping over both blankets, chairs, and people. AKA, it's a very difficult path. And her son, he's 5. Now, if you know anything about 5-year-olds, the more opportunities they are given to screw up, the more likely they are to screw up. Interesting, right? We are the same way. We just have a little bit more experience, you would hope. But some people have very little experience in certain situations, and so they act like a 5-year-old. If you go back to my episode about this exact topic, having the age of a 2 or a 5 or a 150-year-old in a specific situation. But the more opportunities you are given to choose an incorrect one or screw up, the more likely you're going to screw up. And her son continually kept stepping on chairs, stepping on blankets, getting in the way of people, running into things because he wasn't paying attention because he's 5 and he's looking sideways or backwards while he's walking forward. My son does that. It drives me nuts. But this really got me thinking. When you take action, are you thinking about the action you're taking and the consequences and the results? You can choose your actions. You cannot always and almost never choose your consequences. Are you thinking about those? Are you pondering about those? It logically, as the crow flies, does not make sense to walk adjacent or laterally or parallel, I should say, to the porta potties, go further to walk down the path when you can just go straight. It's a shorter path to go straight, but in reality, it's a faster path to go around. I want you to think about this action in your life. The most obvious, straight to the thing that you can see, is not always the best. It's not always the fastest. It's not always the easiest. Conversely, more often than not, the path straight is the path of most resistance. It is the most difficult. It is the most filled with obstacles. But if you just thought and chunked laterally, chunk up, which is what is an example of what is an example of this thing versus what is the purpose of this thing? Or I should say, what is the purpose versus what is the example? And then what is like it? So a lateral chunk would be like this thing in my hand, I eat it. What's an example of eating it? An apple. What is a lateral chunk of an apple? An orange or a steak. They're both food. You both eat them. But chunking up, purpose of an apple, what is the purpose? It is sustenance. It gives me energy. It gives me life. And then further on. Chunking up, chunking down, and chunking laterally. That's like a super brief 15-second overview of a training that took 2.5 days. But how important it is to think of these consequences of your actions. By going out and around, we were faster. This is the same way with boats and sailing. I once knew a sailor, and this person was an avid sailor. And he said, going from point A to point B, getting to that island, which I can clearly see right in front of me, you cannot necessarily go straight because there's sand barges and coral reefs and a whole bunch of stuff between here and there. You have to go around. So you might go left and then go right and go backwards and forwards and all the way around. And so from an aerial view, if you just had a breadcrumb of the trail to which you would take, it makes absolutely no sense. But if you can see below the surface of the water, it makes perfect sense because you're navigating around all of these obstacles. This is the same way. It's the same concept for you in your choices. The one most direct is not always the easiest. And in fact, it is most often the most obscure, the most obstacle-ridden, the most arduous. And it's so interesting in life because our human nature, human instinct is to take the shortest path as opposed to the path of least resistance. We want to grease the skids. We want this to be easy, but by human nature, we like to make things hard because it makes it worth it. We've always been told doing big things is hard. It's funny, I was just reading a quote from Rockefeller. Was it Rockefeller? Pretty sure it was Rockefeller. And he created systems, right? And I think it's Rockefeller. Man, I'm getting all messed up. Maybe it wasn't Rockefeller. It was one of the early 20th century magnates worth in today's dollars. I think it's like $900 billion in today's dollars. Nobody's ever come close. Elon Musk is like not even halfway there. And He was well known for saying, you don't get to wealth by work, you get to wealth by systems, strategies, and thinking. He was well known for not physically working, but creating systems and processes and overtaking his entire pipeline, taking the entire supplementation to his business and owning every piece of it, all the way down to owning the carpenters and laborers to make the things, to make the pipes, to owning the steel to make the pipes, and using the leftover chaff to use as soldering, like things of that nature, versus throwing away like most companies do. He soldered with it. That's not always most obvious. Most obvious is go straight for your customer base. Well, what about your entire supplement pipeline, your entire supply chain, owning the whole thing? It's not your normal thought process. By and large, you have to think about what actions you're going to take. And of the options you have, take the one that has the smoothest, easiest path, not necessarily the quote unquote shortest or the most direct. Sometimes the most quote unquote direct is actually going out and around. Last night, when we left this event, we left early. We actually walked just before the fireworks started. We left where we were, packed everything up, and then walked to the outskirts of this event. We could no longer hear the music. We were out by the road. We had a great viewing point. And in fact, there was a better one, which was a little closer to our car. We didn't think we could make it in time. But we sat there. And then we left about 5 minutes or so before the fireworks ended. It was still a 25-minute fireworks show, and we saw until 22 minutes in. And we got in our car, and we went out and around, going the opposite direction from the easiest, shortest path by way of maps. And by going out and around, there was no traffic. Zero, zilch. And we made it home in a very timely manner. This is because we went out and around. The smoothest, quickest path sometimes takes longer than the most direct path by way of distance, but it's actually faster. Pretty sure I just confused you right there. Sometimes the longer distance path is faster to do. That's what I'm trying to say. But this concept of moving your needle forward, taking action, when you don't know what to do, any action is the best action. When you have an idea or clear intention, clear image of what to do, or even an idea, take your options and think out possible scenarios on what could arise, both resourceful and unresourceful, and move forward from there. That's what I got for you guys. That's what I want you to think about on this fabulous mid-August day. What day it is, I don't even know. I think it's 21st. Guessing. I think it's 21st when this comes out. Have this conversation with your friends and your family. Leave me a review. Find me on social, Mr. Brad Draper. You can like this thing, subscribe to it, download it for future listenings. Until next week, I love you guys. Bye.